Hi everybody, welcome to MJ Comix. Today's video is really important because on last weekend I happened to do a live show with Manu, the 9.9 Newsstand. Initially he came on really to give a update on what was going on with PSA's grading of comic books, but it quickly got overtook and it took precedent with the CGC Banana Gate bending scandal. So this video here is I've just clipped really the PSA update so people can come straight to that and find out what's going on with PSA grading comic books. So please stick around to find out what's happening.
The intention of today's stream was to talk about the updates from PSA, how far along they are, what they've done in terms of changing things after the initial feedback when they released the prototype and made their announcement, so on and so forth. And I've been in communication with them and wanting to communicate some of that messaging to our, friends in the community.
Let's just get into
Let's talk PSA, guys. Okay,
let's get an update on what's going on with PSA comic grading from the 9.9 Newsstand, Manu.
I appreciate it. So we'll just a quick. Everyone knows they announced comic book grading, right? Maybe 2 months ago now, whatever it was, that was announced. And the prototype slabs, James says, PSA. We've come to that portion of the conversation. And thank you everybody for hanging out with us. And like I said, I'll stick to the top line stuff and we'll do a more in-depth discussion later. So they've announced comic book grading. They're looking to actually officially allow for submissions early in 2025, first quarter, presumably as early as January, potentially. During SDCC, they showcased and released their prototype slabs. They're not graded, but the books are encapsulated in the first iteration of their slab. And it was a collaboration that they did with Kith, the fashion line, the pop culture brand, if you will. And these are them. These are the prototypes slabs with custom books that were created for this venture with Kith and Asics. These were paired up with a box of shoes, and then you get a randomly inserted comic book, different rarities based on the color. The character, of course, correlates to the shoe that you buy. And the reason for them to do this was, one, to put something cool out there and make a dope announcement at SDCC that, hey, we're getting into comic books, but also it was to get feedback. I had the benefit and the pleasure of handling these slabs months prior, or maybe about a month and a half or 2 months prior. And I had some feedback to give. So we knew some things that we would be anticipating, and a few other people had the ability to handle them as well. Shout out Swag. We handled them together as well. And so there was some feedback. And so we knew what we were getting into. And of course, with the label, that was definitely going to be a place where we knew we were going to get a lot of criticism, because even PSA from the card side, a lot of people sort of, critique that label. I love that label for a lot of reasons. I'm going to keep my opinion out of this. I just want to present some of the facts. And a lot of the community said, they suggested a bunch of changes. Now, the reason I bring all that up is just to bring us up to speed and to say, well, PSA has listened and they are actively listening and they're making changes. So one of the things about, and also Neo, shout out Neo Cards and Comics. He is in communication with PSA as well. And Elizabeth is the general manager of pop culture at PSA. She's actually heading this up. She's responsible for this. She's assembling the team and everything, that's happening with comic book grading at PSA. She has a lot of things on her plate, but she's great with her responsibilities. And she and Neo actually just did an interview on Neo's channel. So some of the information that I'm going to be communicating with you, you can also take in long form through that interview. It's a beautiful interview. And then I'll give you some tidbits that aren't available there, but that's just because I had an independent conversation with Elizabeth prior to that interview happening, right? But since we've run so long in this episode, if you want it at length, Neo's channel, there's a beautiful interview with Elizabeth there. It's wonderful to listen to. They did a great job. But we'll jump into some of the things that may or may not be mentioned there, but also I'll highlight some of the things that are. So, that I heard Neo's voice. That was Neo's voice.
I was just getting the link for the chat.
That's awesome. Rob, what up? So in terms of them taking in some of the feedback, the case is larger. The prototype case is larger, both in height and width, and it's substantially heavier than any other case available on the market, which
Yeah.
of course it was met with a bit of hesitation and reluctancy to accept, because we have boxes that
Yeah.
hold our slabs, and CGC and CBCS kind of fit into the same everything.
Yeah.
You know,
The
there are some bad
BCW boxes. Yeah.
BCW boxes, the regular cardboard boxes, so on and so forth. So they took that. Oh, Neil's with us. What up, my man? What's going
Yeah.
on? Awesome.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
so
joining us.
definitely check out that video. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I got an ad. Oh, that's fine. I don't need to. Well, let me get back into the chat. All right, there's the chat. And so they took that feedback, and they realized, okay, for the they called it they I use the word retail ready, retail level, come January, when it's time for us to submit a standardized sized case that works with, all of our containment devices, and it's just what people are used to. So
Yeah.
they've taken that feedback and they have done so. They are
Brilliant.
engineering a case that is almost the exact dimension. I mean, how I have it here, the exact words that I have, I'll just read those. um it will, okay, here we go. The new industry standard case will be the exact same dimensions, and this is from Elizabeth, will be the exact same dimensions as CGC and CBCS standard holders, allowing for easy storage and management. It will also weigh several ounces lighter, not to the competition, but to this heavier prototype case.
Yeah.
We are in the middle of production and expect to have the new size available at launch. In addition to also, this larger case is going to remain available. This is going to be considered their premium offering. So if anyone wants to have the heavier, more substantial, possibly more protecting sort of environment for their expensive comic books,
Yeah.
they will be able to pay for the premium service of having it encapsulated in this. But for many of us, the majority of books being graded, go into a regular size slab. They are working on that. They've listened to us. That's going to come out. I haven't seen it yet. No one has seen it yet, but I look forward to seeing it once it is available. And I look forward to communicating to you guys, like, what I think about it. So hopefully I have the benefit of being able to get some access to that. So
Manu,
that was
has
the
have
first
they
update.
have they said what the price difference will be in that?
No, in fact, they
Roughly?
haven't talked about prices at all in any regard yet. Well, not to
Yeah.
me, internally, I'm sure they have, but I
Yeah.
can only imagine that it is in their best interest and it's their desire to be extremely competitive. The least amount of obstacle you put in the way of acquiring a new customer is going to be best, right? So I'd assume that they're going to be very competitive. Now, right in line with that update is the label, right? So label adjustments are being made, and as soon as I'm able to get a mock-up, I'm going to be asking them for it aggressively, and hopefully they're able to share it with me as soon as it is ready. I really want to see it, but adjustments will be made. Now, things to know: they are not going to get away from their design identity. It is going to
Yeah.
remain with the red border. That is PSA's signature, of course. And there's been some feedback from comic book, people, as if I'm not a comic book person, but I didn't have the same feedback. There were like some old school dealers that voiced the opinion that red is bad. I don't really have that association,
No.
so I took that consideration. I get it. All the grading companies have moved away from red. Blue is neutral. Everything is kind of universally blue, and then the colors indicate other things. But this label is going to remain this color, and I'm fine with that. I love it. Oh, I got to leave my
It's
personal
kind of
opinion
their
now.
trademark, isn't it? To be honest, it's like their
It's their brand. It's their trademark. The red ring, the red border around a white label is their trademark. But James says red equals bad. I mean, I've heard it said a few times, but let's change the narrative. It's going to have to be shifted if we're going to adopt PSA. So I will be happy to try to play a role in shifting that narrative. Oh, he just
yeah.
means in general, ready, like stop sign, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it. I get
Always
it.
been.
But in this context, I guess it just means PSA. And over time, we'll decide what that means to the comic book community. And hopefully, PSA is a great addition, a welcome addition. And hopefully, they do really, well by the community.
Well, let's
So
be honest. It's never really affected their cards having the red
Oh no,
line
they're
man.
still they're the leader in cards. They've been the leader for a good while. They passed up Beckett BGS a little while ago, and they've maintained their standard their position at the top. So perhaps the same thing can happen here, but they definitely give CGC a run for their money. And so
Yeah.
there are going to be some adjustments made to the label. They're going to be tweaking the placement of things, the size of things, to try to make it visually more legible from a distance, and also just better looking in general, right? So they're just things that they're going to try to do to make it better looking.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing what that is. Naj, what up? What up? How are
Naj,
you?
well,
How are
thank you
you?
for joining us, our good friend.
So yeah, absolutely. Always lovely to see you here. And your interview with Naj, your episode with Naj, that was so good. So let me
Thank
just
you.
touch on a couple. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll touch
There's
on
a
a
really
couple
good
other things.
question here from
Oh,
Derek, if you don't mind.
please. Yeah,
Uh, any update on the graders? We've heard that Mark Wilson, but what about the
yeah.
rest? Poached from CGC or CBCS?
This is a great question, and the way that I asked this question to them to just see where I was, I knew they're not done yet, done hiring,
Yeah,
not done trading, not done putting together the guidelines, all of that. But I did ask, like, how's Mark Wilson? How's Mark Wilson settling in? How's the team coming together? And it's kind of what we imagine. Mark Wilson is working hard, getting the protocol put in place, getting whatever needs to be written for training guides, so on and so forth, and they are assembling that team. Hiring is happening, training is happening, but it's kind of early in that process, right?
yeah,
Like, so we don't know any of the other names associated at the moment, so on and so forth, but they're working towards it. And as soon as I know more about that, I definitely want to share that with you. But unfortunately, I don't. But I think I don't know more about that because there isn't much more there yet,
yeah,
concrete enough to share in any sort of a meaningful way. Poach from CGC, CBCS. I don't know where the graders are. I know Mark Wilson came from CBCS, of course, but I don't know where the rest of their hiring is happening at the moment. I did speak to some pressers that have applied, but I don't know what the application process is like, and I don't know how much hiring has happened.
yeah.
Train from scratch, great question. I will get those answered for you, Derek. That is a guarantee.
Good question.
Same, different guidelines as CGC. They're going to be very similar, right? So they're from everything that I understand and from everything that I've been told, they're keeping the exact same grading scale. Like even the 1.8 at the bottom, that odd 1.8 that exists between a 1.5 and a 2, and then the 0.8
Yeah,
never repeats itself again until 9.8. But apparently they're keeping all of that, including the 9.9 and of course the 10. They're actually really excited about the 10. Elizabeth speaks about that at length on Neo's interview with her, and I've spoken to her about it at length as well. And listen, they're in the business of tens. It is in their brand to give tens. I'm a little scared of tens, but if the tens are tens, then yes,
yeah,
they should have a 10 on them. It shouldn't be
yeah,
this, the way it's been done historically by certain comic book companies is like gatekeeping certain grades. We know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, 9.9s are out there encapsulated as 9.8s. In fact, I'll bring up something Mark Wilson said. He said it on an interview that he did on he said it on an interview that he did on Comic Book
yeah.
Invest.
Best,
That's
yeah,
the channel's name. That is his son, Dave, who is a comic book entrepreneur, has his own business
yeah,
in comic books and has a YouTube channel. And he said something about this because Mark Wilson divides, and I am sort of speaking out of turn because I'm speaking for him in a sense, but I'm trying to repeat what not only I heard on that interview, but also what I spoke to him about in person at a dinner recently. And so because I was very curious about this, he sort of separates grading into two sort of categories, right? And I'll use my own word. Let's call it like casual grading and
yeah,
professional grading. And by casual grading, I sort of mean like myself and collectors that we might be grading 4 or 5 books in a day, and we have all of the opportunity to look at everything from every angle, spend
yeah,
time with it, even come back to it the next day and decide what it is. Do we want to
yeah,
submit it? What do we think it is? Well, professional grading is about a schedule, it's about a timeline, it's about getting these things done. Employees are being paid to grade books, and there is a stack of books behind them, and so you have to be quick, you have to be efficient. And there was this thing that started to happen. It happened before the pandemic as well, whenever there's a rush, but during the pandemic, it was very pronounced. There was a backlog of books that was enormous. So even if a book was deserving of a 9.9, it wasn't given one. Why?
yeah,
Because a 9.8 is the safe grade. Rather than
yeah, yeah.
scrutinizing the book, rather than giving it to another grader to verify your opinion of a 9.9, just give it the 9.8, send it out. Why? Because a customer is not going to complain about a 9.8.
And 9.8 now.
We've been conditioned to expect a 9.8 and celebrate like it's our lucky day if it's a 9.9.
Yeah,
But the truth is, we were lied to. There were plenty of 9.9s that we should have gotten that we didn't. And I use the example all the time of Ultimate Fallout 4, 5,000 9.8s, no 9.9s. It's not because there aren't any 9.9s. That's because they got 9.8s on them.
yeah,
That's why. And so that's an interesting thing there. And we're going to see how Mark Wilson brings his experience from CBCS, his experience as a previous dealer and a grader into this space, and how much of this is going to be reflective of professional grading or the grading that the collector would be, as an idealist would want to happen. But much of that's going to be determined by the processes that they put in place at PSA. Do
Yeah.
they get a backlog? Do they have a good a process, right? So I'm going to leave it to him to speak more about, but any opportunity I get to talk to him, I'm always
Yeah.
going to ask him about what's happening with 9.9s and stuff. So
Yeah.
Derek, great question. Once I have more information, I'll definitely share that with you. Is there? I'll go through some more, but is there another question we can answer, and then I'll go through some more of my stuff for
Naj
time.
has asked,
Yes.
is it just me who got fatigue with the grading thing and decided to not send books on my own until the climate conditions got better? It just
I'm gonna
feels a
answer.
little too risky.
I love this question, and wait. Did you want to answer it? I'm sorry. I'll wait for you
No,
to
no, no,
answer.
you can answer it. You're better
Oh,
suited for it than me, mate. Don't worry.
I just had this conversation last night, and there's fatigue, but there's also just the energy shifted, with all of the things that the risk that there is, and the disrespect that seems to be handed out from the great, like their lack of care and concern for the things that we are
Yeah,
care for and concerned about. It's left a bad taste in my mouth. It's like, why am I submitting you a book that I really care about, paying you, and you don't even care about doing your job correctly? So that's created some hesitancy. I wouldn't. I personally don't define that as fatigue, but I imagine that is a way to qualify it as well, or to categorize it as well. But for me, it just the energy changed. It became less fun. I was less
yeah.
excited about it, this is my personal opinion. I don't mean to burden anybody with it, but to a certain degree, I somewhat look at a CGC book, and there's just something. There's
You think
something
there's
about it.
something wrong with it?
It's just I've been turned off a little by it. Like, I know what's behind the curtain, and the label and the brand doesn't mean the same thing to me anymore. So I just feel differently about it. Am I still a grader? I am. Have I been grading? No. Am I excited about competition, kind of cleaning this market up a little bit, this space up? I am. Am I anticipating having fun with PSA? I am. But I'm optimistic about that. I'm anticipating having a good time because I want it to be great.
Yeah,
It's going to be up to PSA to do right by us. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm optimistic, and I want to help it get into a place as much as I can help. I don't, in any official capacity, work for PSA or anything like that. I'm just very fortunate to be able to have a line of communication, and hopefully they see some benefit in the feedback that I communicate to them from the community, and how I communicate their messaging to the community. And maybe
yeah.
they keep me in the loop, but that's up to them. They could kick me to the curb whenever they want. I hope they don't. PSA, I like you guys, and thank
Yeah,
you for everything that you've allowed me to do so far.
I think that what's good though is that they're engaging with those conversations with, customers and the community. Like,
Yeah, no, I
um,
think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. We hadn't seen it like that before. Like, literally, we complained about something, they changed the something, right?
yeah,
So I'm kind of a huge supporter of that. If you
yeah,
want to put out a product that we want to buy, that works for both people, both parties involved. So Naj, you're not the only one. I've spoken to people that have felt fatigue and kind of turned off by the process, and they're just waiting for something great. I love what Palm Beach Comic Presser has said to us here. Thank you for still being with us. He said, I am excited to see PSA enter the market, and the updates that Manu reports are promising, right?
yeah,
So I appreciate that openness to it. And yeah, I will continue to support them, because I hope that they are going to be a great thing for us as people that enjoy grading and pursuing grades in books. I love this stuff. CGC bent my daredevil, Jose says. I'm daredevil number one. I'm sorry, Jose.
sorry,
Uh,
buddy.
I do
Um,
apologize for that. But hello,
well
thank you for
said,
being
man.
with us.
No,
Oh, thank you, my friend.
I've got to say thank you, buddy, because without people like you, we wouldn't be getting these sorts of updates. You wouldn't get the sort of feedback, and you really are a top guy. Like, you are a genuine asset to this community. Like,
Uh, I can't tell you how much that means to me, man. Like, I'm gonna
mate,
cry. Like, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
you've done more over the last, what has it been, 9 months maybe?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Some people have probably done over 20, 30 years.
I don't know how to take that, but I'll take that as that makes me feel really good to hear, man. I really, really appreciate that. So thank
Just
you.
just keep doing what you're doing, buddy.
Let's
Good
keep
things are
let's
gonna happen.
keep doing it, man. I think over the last 8, 9 months, whatever it was, I feel like the community has gotten stronger. Like, we are more together. We're more able to express what we feel, and find support where we need it, and no one's sort of ashamed to say the companies did them wrong. Like, I
Yeah.
don't mean to be so negative, and I don't think I'm being negative, but I say that just to, for anyone that might take it that way, is, we pay the companies for a service. And there's this thing that used to happen where when they did something wrong, we would be a little upset, but then when they fixed it, we would say, thank you for fixing it. Well, I kind
Yeah.
of just wish it didn't go wrong to begin with. And then when they do something right, we celebrate them. But that's actually, they've been paid for it, and I'm not saying don't celebrate them, but
Incompetence.
yeah, but hold them accountable to the same degree of the amount that you clap when you get the grade that you want.
Yeah.
Find some balance in there, and I'm a big proponent of that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
JSS
Oh,
Booking has asked,
great question.
do do PSA plan to offer signature authentication? I believe they do, don't they? They offer the auto.
That is absolutely right. It's already built into their business. The area where the cards and other items get authenticated is the same area that the comic books are going to get authenticated. And thank you, Naj. I appreciate that. And to take this a step further, so that's just a yes. That's just a simple, easy yes. They already do that. They're going to continue to do that. And this is going to lead to two questions, or two things that I would like to add. A friend of mine, shout out Doom Card. Oh, he was previously known as Doom Card. His name is Don't Even Worry. Shout out. Perhaps he's with us, but if not,
Hopefully.
he has an incredible page, an incredible collection. He's an incredible member of our community, both in comic books and in cards. And he asked me a really great question a few weeks ago, and I said I would definitely get an answer for it. And he goes, is there any way, or are they thinking about authenticating sketches and remarks
Oh,
on comic books? And I thought, wow, I had never even thought about that.
yeah. You forget about those things.
Yeah, and so I asked, and the answer was no. We hadn't thought about that either. Is that something we should be thinking about? Like, no one had thought about it, and that's not a bad thing. They're focused on what they know needs to happen. This is a very unique sort of outlier of a question, and so it got them thinking a little bit. And I said, you know what? I'll think about this some more, but I will. After I sent the question, received an answer, I had some more thoughts in the meantime. So when I responded again by saying, but you know what? This is not something that the community is expecting or would be disappointed if it doesn't happen, because no other company offers anything like that. And then what I did was I called my friend Val. Val and Victoria run a company called Legacy Studios. Shout out to them. And they deal with artists, original art, sketch covers, all of this. So they're constantly submitting to CGC and CBCS and CGC to get
Yeah.
the artwork encapsulated. And he was like, no, no, no. He said, no one verifies or authenticates. They use facilitators and witness programs. That's it. You have to grab a witness. They have to watch the thing being drawn, and then it's verifiable by them. And
Yeah.
so that's what the other companies do. And so I communicated to PSA, like, you don't have to worry about that. No one's expecting that. And it seems like a very difficult thing to do, because Val gave a very interesting example. I don't want to say something I'm not supposed to. So I'll put it
Okay.
in my own words. Is what if you, how do I say this without jeopardizing a certain company's credibility? It's very hard to identify if something has been added to art after the
Yeah.
fact. You don't know if the art
Yeah.
is entirely done by that artist, so it makes it nearly impossible to conclude that it is that artist's work if someone else had drawn something else on it
On
somewhere in
top.
the process.
Yeah.
That witnessing process, it isn't always seamless, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. You know, so there are some concerns there. But the second part to this, which leads me to, I asked, and Neo very smartly asked the same question as well. I'm not surprised that Neo and I have asked some of the similar questions, because I hope to be sort of as, kind of inching up towards being as smart as Neo. So it makes me happy if I ask similar questions. But the question I asked was, so have you made any decisions about if the label is going to change colors when it's
Yeah.
restored, assigned, so on and so forth? And the answer, simply as it is now, is no. There will be no color indication, and that's different from what we're used to with any of the other companies. But the answer is no. There will be no color changing on the labels. It will just be identified in the writing. Very simply. You have to read the label to know what that book is comprised of or not
Yeah.
comprised of. So
That
the
makes sense.
information is there clearly, but you're not going to be able to say, oh, that's a purple label and run away from it. That's not going
Yeah.
to happen. And that's actually probably really great. And maybe it would change things for the industry, because that purple label, it could identify, it could reflect, it could be for many reasons. And oftentimes it's for like a little bit of color touch or something.
Yeah.
And, but before you even realize what it's for, a lot of people just shy away from it. It's been called, what is it called again? The plod, the purple label of death or
The
something
purple
is the
label of death. Yeah.
nickname. You know, and that's a bad association, right? Just because a book has a purple label doesn't mean you should avoid it entirely. Maybe you should consider why it's a purple label and how much money you can save acquiring that book with the purple
Exactly.
label,
Yeah.
right? But don't just run away because it's purple. And so they aren't going to, as it is now, they are hoping not to go into color changing labels. Now, should that change, hopefully I find out and I can tell you guys, but right now there will be no changes in the color.
Okay, makes sense. No, I just said CGC is problematic. I fear sending anything their ways. PSA market is not clear yet, and CBCS has its own issues. That's correct.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
see any book for grading for last year. Started buying. That's exactly the same as me. I'm just
Yep.
buying already graded books, 100%.
Yep. And you know, we're relative to what we were buying them for 2 years ago, it seems like we're
Saving
getting
money.
great deals on books. So
Exactly.
you know,
But what I have noticed is, and I don't know if whether you agree with this, Manu, is that people are tending to prefer their books raw again.
yeah,
And you know, like the comic capsules and
right.
like they're just appearing everywhere now. I know
I
certain
have
other
noticed.
YouTubers that I follow, they've stopped collecting slabs and they've gone the comic capsule route. Is
Mm-hmm.
that what do you make of that?
I think from my perspective, I think it's two things. I think the companies that provide alternate methods of self encapsulation or containment, whatever you want to call it, I
Yeah,
think they saw an opportunity to double down on their marketing. And so they
yeah,
took advantage, which created more awareness for products like the comic capsule people. They did outreach to all of the influencers and so on and so forth, and got sponsored, promoted all over the place.
yeah. And
So they
they came out with they've now done like a Silver Age to fit the Silver Age books in now, which are everywhere. You're seeing everywhere.
Right. And so they're capitalizing on the moment. And that moment is the second part of my answer. And that speaks to what Naj asked and what I said, is the emotion and the sentiment surrounding the enthusiasm and optimism that we have towards grading has shifted to the
Yeah,
negative. So
yeah,
you have the sentiment changing, where we kind of looking at plastic encapsulated books is like, well, what's actually in there? Like, did we get lied to? So that sentiment's changing, making us hesitant to submit. And that's making us reconnect with, the purity of the book. And we're sort of
yeah,
cheerleading this idea of just having it raw and keeping it safe, because we are very capable of keeping a book safe. If you're
yeah.
not trying to sell the book, there's very little reason you have to grade the book. It's a personal thing, but grading is to identify, for most people, I'm not for most people, not a blanket
Market
statement.
value.
Grading is to put a grade on it so that your buyer on eBay doesn't have to think too hard before deciding what the thing is worth. That's what
Yeah,
grading is for the most part. So if you're not selling it, you ain't got to grade it. The slab takes up more space and it costs you money. Just saying. So with the sentiment shift and the other companies that create alternate means of encapsulating, seeing that and marketing into that sentiment shift, well, that's what you have now. You have more people self-encapsulating and keeping books raw, and that, I think, is the reason why.
Matt Rossi has asked a question. The one thing that worries me about PSA is that Steve Borek, is that how you
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it?
Yeah,
Said PSA called him to get his input and were
yeah.
dismissive and ended the call within an hour.
I'm gonna
Considering that Steve invented all the standards, it scares me that PSA seem to act like they know more.
Right, and I'm gonna be Matt. I know a bit more about this that I can't speak on. What you're saying is, I've heard Steve speak about PSA as well. He said something a bit different, but he did,
Yeah,
vocalize the fact that it didn't work out between him and PSA. But he also said, if it could have worked out, he would have been happy to. There's just a reason that that relationship didn't get solidified.
yeah,
And it isn't because PSA wouldn't have wanted to, but there's a conversation to have, and they weren't able to come to some agreement between, two respectable entities, is what I'll say about that. From what limited I know, I just had a little bit more exposure to that than this sentiment here. So I'm not saying you're not right, but there's a little bit more to it. I don't know the whole story, but maybe one day we'll just be able to talk at length to Steve about it. But Steve would have, from what I heard from him, would have been in support of it had it worked out between them. That's all.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. In regards to the authentication for signatures,
Yeah.
like with we know as card collectors, you unpack some cards and you get like you get signature series or whatever in there, don't you?
Oh,
Those
pack
are
pulled autograph. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, pat pulled autographs. So
Mhm.
they PSA will grade them and put that it's a genuine autograph, won't they?
They absolutely will. So PSA already, grades both pack pulled autographed cards as well as
Yeah,
aftermarket autographed cards or signed after the fact. And since I don't deal too heavily in autographed cards, I actually don't know if there's a difference on the label indicating between a pack pulled or an authenticated. Neo, if you are with us with your experience in cards, or anybody that's here with experience in autographed cards, if you can shed some light on that, that'd be great. I don't have two labels to compare, and I've never looked into it with any level of concern
that's
to
fair enough.
differentiate. But
Mhm.
they do encapsulate and authenticate both. But maybe
Yeah,
the pack pulled one doesn't even need authentication because it's known to be pack pulled. That's
yeah,
where I might rely on someone else to provide some insight.
yeah. Well, I suppose that comes down to the grading then, doesn't it? Like, they know that it's a genuine card from that
And that's
company.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, you can opt to have an autograph graded or not. You could have the
Yeah.
card graded. So if you have a pack pulled autograph, you might just grade the card, or you might even say grade the card and the autograph. This gets a little too nuanced. I don't want to speak out of line
Yeah, yeah, you can't.
without experience on it. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but you can grade an autograph. Neo says yes, there is a difference. So again, I can't elaborate, but Neo is letting me know, Manu, shut up, bro. There is a difference. So until you learn
Thank
the
you,
difference, don't say nothing. I appreciate
Neil.
that, Neo. Thank you.
Yeah. Just going through the comments, see if there's any more
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely. And once we're caught up on comments, I will continue to talk about some of the stuff that I have here on my screen.
So Derek he's on point. Just look at the difference in the last few months. CGC banana bends have spread and been largely ignored by CGC.
Mhm.
PSA have introduced a brand new case, solicited feedback, and actually listened. They have, to be fair.
Right. It's
A
already
clear difference
very
between
encouraging.
a
Yeah.
clear difference when, at the moment, people are running to CGC to say the house is on fire, and they're
Right.
just, not choosing not to listen. Whereas in
Yeah.
PSA are taking the time to speak to members of the community to kind of perfect what they want it before they even put it out. It's not like they've gone, oh, here we go. This is what we're
Yeah.
doing. This is what
Yeah.
we've done. You can buy them now, and then people go, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't like." They're literally planning, um, for, in advance, which is really good.
I agree. And then one little tidbit. This is a question many people have asked, and it had been shared loosely, but I just wanted to ask to make sure. And the answer is yes. The cases are UV reflective,
Yeah,
and up to 99% UV. They're 99% UV reflective. So for people that know what that means, that's got to be a good thing because I don't think the CGC cases are at all. So there's definitely an added benefit there.
yeah,
And I do think I have to mention this, and so I'm going to out of all fairness because I have to. Newton rings.
yeah.
We talked about them,
Earlier,
in the context of CGC, how they may have done a good job getting rid of them. I think from time to time they might still appear. I really don't know, but it's one of the things that I would hope PSA can figure out a way to sort out. And early on, I did have that question, and they are obviously eager to make sure there aren't Newton rings. But
yeah,
what happened? This is just a matter of fact, and it's important to provide the feedback, but it's important for us to set our expectations. So the prototype slabs started, images and videos started to make the rounds, and I, as well as other people that were scrutinizing, noticed Newton rings on
yeah,
some of the prototype slabs. And I did ask that question. I was like, well, I noticed them. Other people paying attention noticed them. Are you guys aware? Is there a solution? And the answer is they are aware, and they're going to make every effort to try to eliminate them. It is not guaranteed that they will be able to eliminate them or not see them across the board. Like there might
Yeah.
be a book of a certain thickness in the encapsulation that is susceptible to Newton rings. It's just a possibility. So we cannot just make the statement that CGC, we can't just make the statement PSA cases are UV reflective and you won't get Newton rings.
Yeah.
We can't make the statement of you will definitely not get Newton rings, but we can make the statement that they are aware, and obviously they would hope to get rid of them. But it just has to be within the means of the engineering that they're putting into these cases and where there might be a trade-off to get rid of them. So we'll have to wait and see. But I did see some Newton rings, and we may see some later. I just don't know. But in all fairness, that's a thing that's important to me. So I just feel like it has to be said, and I
Yeah.
obviously did ask the question.
Well, I think what everybody appreciates in this community for comic book collecting is honesty, a bit of transparency.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
we know, obviously, we spoke earlier about with the banana curve slabs as they're being put.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
we're no longer getting Newton rings, but your books are getting damaged. So
yeah. No, exactly right. And so yeah, they're making every effort to make adjustments so that the newly engineered cases reduce them further in the hopes of not occurring. And they do believe that their holders will have the occurrence far less than another companies would. So let's hope that is the case, pun intended. And another, right, another very good question, or a lot of people have asked this, and I wanted to get some clarity on to what degree
yeah,
is graders notes. They made the statement early on. I was aware that they do want to do graders notes as much as they can. So that was great. The feedback they got from certain people that they spoke to early was, you got to do graders notes. If you want to win over the
yeah,
consumer, consumers
yeah,
hate that other companies don't give you them. So give them, and they'll
yeah.
love you for it. Right. And so they made a statement saying, every level of book will get graders notes. And that doesn't mean grades. That means like if it's a modern era, if it's a this era, that era, no matter what tier it is, they're going to give graders notes. But the question I had was one level further. I get it. Every tier of book will get graders notes. Does that mean every single book graded will get grader notes?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is here somewhere. Let me just, I'll put it into my own words. Okay, perfect. The simple way of stating this answer is anything that is not a 10 or near
Yeah.
perfect will. That is what
Brilliant.
I'm being told. Everything that isn't perfect
Yeah.
will identify why it's not perfect. And
Yeah.
I
That.
think that's all we can ask for.
Yeah. That is all literally we asked for. Really.
That's it. That's it. So let's hope. I mean, that's going to be really exciting. If
Yeah.
everyone's book
That
has
is.
graders notes, that's pretty good.
I think the worst thing I've ever probably experienced with CGC is that 9.0s. There's no graders notes
I
like
know.
they do.
I know.
You just like, well, there's a massive difference. Why it's a 9.0 compared to even a 9.2 or 9.4. It's just
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
I agree. Jet City Comments said, put graders notes on the back of the label. I don't know that that's going to happen, but
Depends
that's a
how,
fine thought. I don't know that they're going to do that though.
but it depends. If it's an old book, there's going to be quite a bit of problems with it.
Yeah, that's true too. But as long as it's associated with the scan of the barcode thing or something, as long as it's accessible, which that actually is a question I should have asked, because I watched several of Neo's videos reporting on and talking about the graders notes at PSA as they pertain to cards. It's a newly implemented thing where cards
Yeah,
have graders notes, but who has access to the graders notes was kind of a point of contention, I think is the right way to put it. Like the graders notes were only accessible by the submitter of the order. So if
Oh,
you
okay.
bought a book on the secondary a card on the secondary market, you
You
can't
wouldn't be
put in
able to
that
check.
certain number and get graders notes. It has to be through the count of the submitter. Maybe they've changed that, maybe they haven't. I'm just referring to what I heard Neo say months ago. And so I should have asked the question if they are going to do that sort of implementation,
I don't think that
or
would be favoured by the
that's not going
community.
to be favored. Absolutely wouldn't be favored. So I will make that note though, because that's a good
Yeah,
note.
yeah, it's a good point. I think, I mean, years back, I think that was pretty much the case with CGC. You couldn't check the graders notes unless you had a paid account.
I remember that actually. If you had a paid account, you
Correct
could
me if
check
I'm
it.
wrong. If in
No,
a chat, I
wasn't
think that.
there? You know what else there was? If I remember correctly, you could pay $5 for graders
Oh yeah,
notes.
to
They would
get yeah,
ask
yeah,
you to
yeah,
pay.
100%.
I
That,
remember
but
that.
this was, we're talking years back, absolute
Oh,
years
Matt
back.
Rossi just said it too. He said CGC used to do that. You used to have to pay $5 to read graders notes if you weren't the submitter. There you go. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to get some more clarity
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good.
on that. But I am excited about graders notes. So, um,
JSS bookings, but what about page quality, white versus off white, etc.? Some in the
oh yeah,
community
yeah.
think that
Oh
off
yeah.
white pages should be deducted.
Oh, that. No, I think they're going to follow the way that we have been conditioned to accept the grading and qualifications of books. I do not believe, especially coming from my assumption of what Mark Wilson is going to bring to the table from his learnings and his experience. I
Yeah,
don't think that they're going to hold page color against the grade. It is just going to be identified as its own qualification, which is the page color. Now, one of the things that I was really enthusiastic about speaking about, and other members of the community were as well, it's like, well, since you guys are starting this from scratch, why don't you guys put centering against grade? Like, if the book is miswrapped, if you could see the back cover on it, make that go against the grade the same way
yeah,
you do with cards, because cards have four criteria: centering, corners, surface, and edges, right?
yeah,
And obviously comic books have far more criteria, but in what we're used to is a 9.8 can have a miswrap or not a miswrap. Now visually we make a decision as to aesthetically which one we like
yeah,
better, and oftentimes we pay more for the one that has a cleaner spine. You can't
yeah.
see the back cover, but it doesn't actually affect grade. So that is something that I had discussed, but that is not a boat that I believe they're going to be rocking.
Okay.
Um, it's going to be not held against grade, the centering, from my understanding, as it is now. I do not believe they're going to change that.
Matt Rossi's put, oh hell no, Manu. I don't want any grading based on corners wraps. The
It is
production of
different, Matt.
comics
You're
versus
right.
cards is much different.
It is different. I will admit, I do want a world where the wrap matters to the grade, but at the same time, I'm not worried about it because we make that personal differentiation ourselves. You know,
Yeah,
if we're willing to pay more for one that looks better to us, that's our personal grading happening. We're already doing it.
yeah.
We can see that. We don't actually need to be told that. So I understand where Matt's coming from, and that's why I'm not bothered if that doesn't get taken into consideration.
Have you got anything else that you've got on your notes or?
Um, yeah, actually, but what I do want to say is, since I don't want this episode to run too long, and I do want to be revisiting conversations like this with updates as I have them. But
Yeah,
for more, you can certainly enjoy the entire conversation on Neo's channel, and that
yeah,
way that is save us some time, and I won't be too redundant, right? Because there are a few tidbits here that are unique to the conversation I was having, but much of this can be heard at length with some visual accompaniment of two people having a conversation on Neo's channel as well.
no,
Oh, I
I'm
guess
definitely
we're
going to check
having a
that out.
conversation too, but we're actually having an interview with each other. So, I think since that the interview with Neo is a great one, and I think a lot of our friends are going to enjoy consuming that. And I've touched on a couple of updates. Let me just think really quickly. I guess what I'll share here, because I will revisit this, we will talk about this some more, is just that PSA is working. They're working in the right direction. They're hiring. They're listening to feedback. They plan to be ready early 2025 for
Yeah,
grading. There are going to be, you could expect some more information, more announcements, probably around NYCC time, New York Comic Con, and I'll try to keep you guys posted. I'm going to do
yeah,
my
yeah,
best to not be, when there's something to say, we will say it. And so I'll keep you guys posted with anything that I learn or any questions that I think to ask. But maybe we'll just wrap up now. I wanted to just say hello to a couple of people real quick.
Of course,
Maybe we'll have like a shout out time for all of our friends in the chat. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope the information today was useful. I think it should be. And I think it's really important for us to be aware of these issues, the bending of the things, the grading of your books, what to look out for, holding companies accountable, all of that good stuff. And a big thank you to Palm Beach Comic Presser, Ron, for joining us.
He was
super amazing.
Fantastic. Ron, absolutely fantastic, honestly.
Absolutely. Burke Family Comics, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for your incredible interview with Ron earlier today as well. More great content, more great information. James, thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you for
coming
everything on. Always.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Shout out to Justin, Spidey Hits. I was in San Diego with him recently. We had a great time. Always like to say hello to my friend.
I watched his video and that experience of you two first meeting was like it was just pure joy. Honestly,
it was great, man. It was great. It made me feel very happy in a way that I think only that sort of personal relation. It's different, it's different. Like I have moments of happiness, but that was one that I don't expose myself to too often because I just I socialize in a virtual sense. But in the physical world, a very small circle. And if my friends and my family aren't immediately around me, I don't do too much traveling unless it's business, unless it's necessary. So for Justin and I to meet each other on the street, I mean, we had something to do that day, but we didn't have to meet up before. And Justin is all love, and it was just great. It was great to hang out with him prior to the thing that we had to do and afterwards. And meeting him for the first time was fantastic. So big shout out to Justin. Big shout out to all the friends that we shouted out already. Shout out Swag. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Shout out Neo. Shout out Elizabeth at PSA, the general manager of pop culture. A lot of this, I don't know if any of this would happen without her. So big shout out to her. Hope she's doing extremely well. And we'll pick up where we left off the next time we're together on the screen. I think that might be a good place to wrap it up.
I can't wait, buddy. So thank you everybody for watching. It's been emotional and it's been great. So we'll see you guys next time. Manu, you're the best.
You are, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Take care, everybody. Bye.